Let's talk about what is going on with defence and indeed Ukraine and stateside with our next guest, Steve Gill, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations. Very good afternoon to you, Steve.
Good afternoon, Julia.
I do think, first of all, we do need to start, not with what Trump has been doing in stateside, but this defence spending issue, because we've got Defence Secretary of the US, Peter Hegseth, joining other defence ministers in NATO in Brussels today at this meeting, where we're told that they are close to consensus over 5% of GDP spend on defence for all NATO countries. You know, barely anyone was making the 2% for years. Trump spoke out in his first term, I think quite rightly, speaking out now as well. We're moving up to 2.5%, ambition possible to move to 3%. Now they're talking about 5% in total. Do you think that's going to happen, and do you think it's necessary?
I think it'll be very difficult for some of the countries that have even worse economic basis and foundation than say the Brits. But I do think that the call from Trump is that Europe ought to be paying more of their share of defense. You know, the U.S. is, President Trump says all the time, we have this big, beautiful ocean that separates us from the problems in that area, in Middle East, everywhere else. So I don't think it's unfair to ask for it. I think it's how quickly it has to happen, because, again, you've got economic pressures in Great Britain, and as long as Keir Starmer is the prime minister, you're going to continue to have them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very interesting. Obviously, the key threat, right now, the immediate threat is Ukraine. It's the threat to Ukraine from Russia. And it's interesting that after we saw those incredibly audacious attacks by Ukraine, not just on bombing jets in Russian territory, you know, thousands of miles away from the Ukrainian border by its very clever drone attack, but also the attack on the Kerch Bridge, providing access to Crimea. We've had a phone call between Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump. Again, these sort of hour-and-a-half calls they have, even allowing for translations. That's a long call. And Donald Trump reported that Putin has said he will have to respond to Ukraine's drone attack on Russian air bases. We've seen some attacks. We've seen children killed. No one seems to be an outcry about that. It happens in Gaza, then it's a genocide. Apparently not when Vladimir Putin does it. But do you think that there has been a game change in terms of this war from that attack, from the conversations that Putin and Donald Trump has had? Do you think we are seeing a different attitude towards Russia and indeed a different attitude towards Ukraine from Donald Trump?
You know, I don't know that talking always leads to a successful negotiation, but I do know that not talking never leads to one. So whether we're talking with Iran, whether we're talking with Gaza and Hamas, when you're talking, there is the possibility of progress. And I think in particular, two issues I'd want to point out. The attacks on those nuclear bombers by Ukraine, you know, they're declaring, oh, this is, you know, Russia's Pearl Harbor. I would point out that after Pearl Harbor, Japan got nuked. So be careful what you proclaim. You need to know your history. Second, that attack, if it was being directed by the U.S., the UK, the French, the Brits, part of the START treaty is that you have to put your nuclear bombers out where everybody can see them. The same thing with the U.S. nuclear bombers. By attacking with the assistance of the U.S., that's essentially a break of the nuclear START treaty, and Russia has the full capacity either to respond or to just hide theirs, which is not what we want. So I think Ukraine's actions there were very provocative, not just in terms of Ukraine, Russia, but in terms of the rest of the world.
I mean, I was going to say provocative. These are weapons that are being used against Ukrainian civilians, for goodness sake.
Not nuclear, not the nuclear bombers that were hit.
I know, I think there were other bombers that were hit that have been used. That have been used against Ukraine.
They aren't deploying nuclear weapons, and they're having
not nuclear weapons. They can carry nuclear weapons, but they're also used they've been used for bombing Ukraine and killing civilians.
But the reason they're out there kind of parked in a row, the same way U.S. bombers are, is because under the START treaty, if you can carry those nuclear weapons, you have to put them out where satellites can see them and observe them. I think the other thing with Putin and Trump, and why I think it's so important, is it is clear that Trump's advisors are not telling him the truth of what's happening in Ukraine. When he was on a tarmac a few weeks ago and was surprised that there had been an attempted assassination, that he was surprised that thousands of Ukrainian drones during a ceasefire had precipitated a Russian response. The fact that Putin and Trump are talking, maybe Trump will actually get some accurate information of what's going on. And as you pointed out, the attack on the Crimean Bridge, the attack on the train bridges by what are clearly terrorist type attacks, we need to stop this. And I think if President Putin and President Trump are talking...
this is our democratically elected ally Zelensky ordering counterattacks on an invading force. We should absolutely be supporting and celebrating this.
Well, I don't think you celebrate a terror attack that kills children and women on a train that blows up a bridge. It's
not a terror attack. This is a bridge being used by an invading nation. I mean, I hate to tell you, wait until you find out all the things that your democratic presidents have done in wars over the years. You're going to be really upset.
Well, and again, I think if you're targeting civilian transportation, that is a war crime.
The bridge is a military asset.
The bridge is a bridge over a train track carrying civilians, and it was clearly a terrorist attack. There were 3 of them, and by the way, they were using C4 explosives that were most likely supplied by the United States. It was a terror attack.
It was orchestrated by the Ukrainian government.
Yeah, by themselves, using C4 provided by the United States. Again, it is a terror attack, and it is a war crime when you target civilians the same way they're targeting churches.
Steve, honestly, I'm disappointed in you. I'm disappointed in you. We're going to change tack because I want to get to something else, and we want to talk about Donald Trump's announcement signing a new travel ban targeting the citizens of 12 different countries. It follows a terror attack in Colorado by an Egyptian immigrant. But a horrific anti-Semitic attack. Although they said the man was in the country illegally, interestingly, he's from Egypt. Egypt is not on the list, but he said may well be. This follows a ban on people from largely Muslim countries being banned back in Trump's first term in 2017. But this 12 countries include... They are Afghanistan, Burma, Chad, Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Yemen. There's also a partial ban on travellers from 7 other countries: Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan and Venezuela. Basically, a lot of these are the basket cake countries around the world. He called them something whole countries at one point, Donald Trump, didn't he? Some of these in Africa. I have to say, I think there are a lot of people who look down that list of countries and say, yeah, maybe we should have a ban on people from those countries unless we can verify exactly who they are and vet them security-wise, because his White House is saying we simply can't vet these people safely. They are a risk to us and they can't get into the country. Do you support that ban?
Well, fear not, Julia. I will put in a good word to make sure you will never be put on the ban list, and you can come see us anytime.
Thank you.
I do think the common element are that many of these are supporters or encouragers of radical Islam, and that's where this Egyptian man, he was a radical Islamist. He was here illegally, and it's not the country of origin, it's the ideology that is driving many of these people. Now, I do think that it's very difficult when you start trying to vet people, particularly you've got the visa issues for education that are also being included in this.
And this is the attack on Harvard for basically just being horrific.
So if you've got some 18 or 19-year-old, I'm not sure about the social media in some of these third world countries, but are you going to have the ability to vet what some 18-year-old coming from Eritrea thinks? So how are you going to vet these people other than they're coming from an Islamist country? I think there are issues and there are concerns in terms of how you're going to do that, but you need to be vetting and knowing who's coming in, what are they coming in to do, and are they following the rules once they get here? And I would encourage my friends and cousins in Great Britain, y'all should be considering this, as you're having about 1,000 a day enter across the channel, and you don't know who they are, you don't know what they're going to do, and you're getting overrun.
Those are the ones who are arriving illegally. We're having quite a lot coming legally as well. Steve Gill, from advisor to Clinton and Bush administrations, thank you very much indeed. Philip Ingram, you would see his face during a lot of that conversation on Ukraine. I think you're going to agree with me on this, Philip. I know you want to come back on that.
Yeah, I just want to fact check some stuff that Steve came up with. The Russians withdrew from the START treaty in February 23, so there's no requirement under them withdrawing from it from departing their nuclear bombers.
They're not big on international rules,
the Ukrainians did not target their nuclear forces. The Tu-95 and the Tu-22, which were targeted, can and do fire KH-101 and KH-47M2 cruise missiles.
I'm lost as well,
Cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles at Ukraine. The squadrons that are carrying the nuclear weapons did not get targeted. Now, these aircraft it's exactly the same aircraft, and the missiles can carry nuclear warheads as well, but they were separate squadrons.
Also, crucially, the attack on the Kerch Bridge. He's saying this is a terrorist attack. This was an attack that Ukraine has owned up to.
There's two bridges. There was a railway crossing where there was a train hit, and there were civilians killed in that whenever they came off the bridge. Those bridges and the junction that it was is used primarily to transport logistics and support to Russian forces on the front line in Ukraine. It's a legitimate military target.
Absolutely.